Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on December 5th, 2022. My name is Elizabeth Nelson, and I served on Ann Arbor City Council from 2018 to 2022. I understand the inner workings of our local government, and I believe that you should too. This week, a new council began organizing for the coming year. After introductory remarks and public comment, council considered agenda items for a little over an hour. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on December 5th, 2022. There was one split vote on an amendment to a resolution. All other items were approved unanimously. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at A2Council.com. The meeting included a monthly report from the chair of the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, or ICPOC. The city is working with a consultant to collect community feedback about plans to develop an unarmed crisis response team. The chair of ICPOC explained.
So the consultant PSC has been doing small group meetings and will be continuing that through December. And then in January, they will be having 2 public forums for the public. So if somebody did not take part in the online survey and was not part of these small group discussions, they can come to one of these public meetings and listen to learn more or contribute their thoughts on what the program could or would look like.
5 people signed up in advance to offer public comments. 1 person commented on safety concerns downtown. 4 people commented on a resolution that directs the City Planning Commission to consider amendments to the Transit Corridor zoning district. 1 person supported the resolution, and 3 offered criticism.
I've heard it said that, oh yeah, wouldn't it be nice for people to be able to take their car in for service and, then take a bus home and so they can wait for it to be serviced. Of course it would be. It would be really convenient for the owners of these cars. And that's exactly the problem with it, because it shouldn't be convenient to own a car.
As such, I urge you to limit car rental allowances to only car shares, preferably only electric car shares, within parking structures in the TC1 zone.
We don't drive everywhere, and there's a lot of people up here who do live without a car, but it'd be easier if our new developments were less car oriented.
These are highlights of council deliberation this week. The consent agenda included 8 items with expenditures of $5.2 million. 2 items were pulled for clarification from staff. Item CA7 reallocated $500,000 in Federal American Rescue Plan Act funds. Allocation of these funds was the subject of a public engagement process, and they were previously directed to a community and law enforcement data platform. Reallocation would direct $300,000 to support the purchase of an ambulance and $200,000 to support downtown services. The city police chief, the city fire chief, and the city administrator answered questions about this reallocation.
While we continue to look for dispatch services, a big portion of whether or not we spent this money immediately was whether or not that would, with the new RMS system and the new transparency system, whether or not that would be compatible with whomever we select as a dispatch service. And so we decided to move away from that goal, just not knowing the time frame.
The reallocation of funding will have no impact on both of our efforts with pursuing this going forward with absolute speed.
We have a work group that has been looking into the creation of public restroom facilities. We also have a resolution that was passed by the last council asking us to spend time working on that. And so the $200,000 would be available for seed money to help us get the public restroom initiative off the ground.
The reallocation was approved unanimously. Later in the meeting, council unanimously approved the purchase of an ambulance with these funds. Item CA4 was a $4.2 million construction contract for sanitary sewer pipe lining. City staff responded to multiple council questions about the choice of contractor and council suggestions to consider different contractors.
And then the final question, what would be the impact of this project on this construction if this construction contract were rebid in an attempt to draw a more compelling bidder pool? This work is presently scheduled to occur between January and April 2023. And it was scheduled that based on the location of the work, which is near the downtown, to avoid other construction projects that we have going on in the downtown area. So if we did postpone this work, it would likely have to go into very late in 23 or early in 24 so that it does not conflict with those other projects. And then finally, I'll also add that it's also likely that rebidding the project would result in higher bid prices.
The whole of the consent agenda was approved unanimously. On the regular agenda, internal rules for City Council were introduced and approved unanimously without debate. Last month, council rules were amended to eliminate open, unreserved public comments at the end of meetings. 5 new members of council approved that rule and reworded another. Masking requirements for in-person attendees at council meetings will follow CDC guidelines, depending on local transmission rates. Council member appointments to boards, commissions, and committees were approved unanimously. Council also considered the 2023 calendar of public meetings. The schedule for 2023 includes no work sessions for public discussion of the annual budget or other topics. Council briefly discussed how it would function without these public work sessions.
During the course of COVID, we transitioned from a hub-spoke meeting, which would require the attendance of all of us at the same time, even if we didn't have our own particular questions, would require staff presence at a time certain, and so forth, a time certain, particularly in the evening. We transitioned to essentially webinar-style video presentations. Staff will have a presentation about a particular initiative. They will put it online. It will be, of course, released to council members, but also to members of the public.
That does not preclude council members in being able to work directly with staff on issues. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a work session. It can be something that several of us can organize and speak with staff and meet about. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
The 2023 calendar was approved unanimously. Councilmember Briggs brought a motion to suspend council rules in order to bring back a budget amendment that was defeated in September 2022. Council rules allow a motion for reconsideration of an issue already decided, but such a motion must happen no later than the next council meeting, and it must come from a council member who voted on the prevailing side in the original decision. Council unanimously approved the suspension of these rules. Council then reconsidered a budget amendment of $134,000 for a feasibility study on the city taking control of major corridors at North Main, Washtenaw, Huron, and Jackson. These roads are currently state trunk lines under the jurisdiction of the Michigan Department of Transportation. Council considered the feasibility study for about 14 minutes.
North Main is going to go through a once-in-a-generation, or 26 years, I guess Thomas Jefferson's definition of a generation, reconstruction. We're going to rip the top off and redo all the pipes that are underneath. If we want that road to function differently than a 4-lane highway, now is the time. If we are not able to take it over, it is unlikely that MDOT will do anything other than rip it up and put it back the way it was with new pipes underneath.
But I do acknowledge that taking them over would come at likely an additional cost for us to maintain them long term. And as we're making progress towards improving some of our neighborhood streets and things like that, I hope to better understand the balance, and I think this study will help to do that.
The budget amendment was approved unanimously. Council considered a resolution directing the City Planning Commission to evaluate and recommend amendments to the recently adopted Transit Corridor Zoning District, or TC1. Discussion lasted for about 20 minutes.
So the couple of proposed amendments that I'm proposing tonight are things to have the Planning Commission revisit. Is one, an amendment to the permitted uses in TC1 to enable some limited auto-oriented businesses, such as car rentals and automotive repair, and this is through special exception use. The second is to request increased flexible setbacks where right-of-ways are narrow to ensure that we don't prevent the opportunity to make needed right-of-way improvements in the future.
Some council members objected to a whereas clause that acknowledged potential delay in applying TC1 zoning to other parts of the city.
The thing that gives me unease about this is the last whereas clause about whereas the City Council acknowledges that requested amendments to TC1 may delay future city-initiated map amendments to the TC1 zoning designation.
Councilmember Iyer and Councilmember Song described a huge sense of urgency around TC1 zoning.
I think it's really important that we move as fast as possible.
So time is of the essence.
Removal of this non-binding whereas clause was the only point of dissent in the council meeting. The amended resolution passed unanimously. Council discussion of the agenda ended around 8:40 p.m. Council then met in closed session for over an hour to consider the purchase or lease of real property. The meeting officially adjourned before 10 p.m. without any additional public comment. For more details about this meeting and other meetings, visit A2Council.com. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you would like to be alerted to more updates like this one.